Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Okovi. This is Global Research Initiative, where initially our name was IMG Research Academy. Global Research Initiative is a collection of physicians who are trying to get into residency in the US, plus those who have already started practicing in the US, mostly foreign trained physicians from various countries all over the world. There's a huge demand for healthcare in the US and a huge work for us to do. But we all know that practicing in the US has um, a lot of barriers that you have to overcome. You're coming from another culture, another different training, another set of knowledge, and coming to integrate and render care in this country. So my group is focused on how we can bridge that little gap, integrating into a new culture and lowering the bar to getting into returning back into medical practice. Today, we're going to be focusing on how to write a personal statement. A lot of physicians trying to apply into residency, they write personal statements as part of the requirement. And there's this confusion every time. What should I write? Should I write my resume? Should I not do my resume? Today, we have an expert opinion, just Dr. Jessica Friedman. Um, I'm gonna leave her to talk about her resume a little bit by way of introduction, so she could tell us more about herself, and then we're gonna dive straight into the question. Dr. Friedman, welcome to our show.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eddie, for having me. It's really a pleasure. And I was excited to hear from you because I really enjoy talking to groups and new groups. Just a little bit about myself. I'm emergency medicine trained. I trained at Cook County Hospital in Chicago, John Stroger. I'm sure some of you know it. Immediately following my residency in emergency medicine, I went to Mount Sinai Hospital in New York City, so the Icahn School of Medicine at Mount Sinai, where I was on faculty there in emergency medicine. I immediately got involved in residency leadership, residency administration. I became associate program director. I was also involved in medical education on the medical school side. So, as you all know, when you're in academia, you wear a lot of different hats in addition to just not just in addition to caring for patients, which is
Absolutely.
obviously the primary goal. But and then I left Icahn, I left Sinai in 2008, so a long time ago. And I founded Med Edits, which is we help students get into residency, we help students get into med school, we do everything related to the pre-med and med process. And so I founded Med Edits in 2008. I simultaneously got a job in the community where I was working per diem, also practicing emergency medicine, and Med Edits has continued to grow. I have a phenomenal faculty, and we work with all different kinds of students from many, many different backgrounds. Having worked with lots of international medical graduates and having worked alongside many international medical graduates throughout my career, you are one impressive bunch of people because it takes perseverance, it takes resilience, and it takes an incredible amount of smarts and hard work to get a residency in the United States as an international medical graduate. So I applaud all of you for wanting to do this. And for those of you who have already made it, like Dr. Eddie, it's a phenomenal accomplishment.
It
So,
is.
so thank you so much for having me. I'm happy to answer your questions. I know Dr. Eddie has some questions for me, which I sort of glazed over because I just figure, look, we'll have a conversation. So I'm happy to answer all of your questions.
Thank you so much for joining us. I mean, listening to your profile, your resume, I mean, this is just what we want to hear. Someone who has been there, seen it all, and now provide rendering care from 2008. That's very remarkable what you do. I'm going to share her website and her social media links after the meeting so people can also get in touch with her. Let's dive into this conversation. So, what's this whole idea about personal statement? Like, what is
Mhm.
it about?
Okay. First of all, as we sort of discussed offline before this started, you talk to different people and you are going to get different opinions. So that's number one. All right. So when you are writing your personal statement, you sort of have to decide, where am I going to be getting my feedback? Where am I going to be getting my information? Because if you ask 50 different people, what should be in your personal statement. If you ask 50 different people to read your rough draft, every single one of those people is going to have a different opinion. Okay. By the same token, if you talk to program directors, they too will have their own opinions of what they like to see in a personal statement. So, what we recommend, because there are so many different opinions on this, and the program directors all sort of have their own idea of what a great personal statement is, we encourage people to take a middle of the road type of approach. So,
Hmm.
there are going to be some people who tell you that your personal statement should only be about your background. They only want to get to know you as a person. They want to know where you're from. They want to know what your hobbies are. They want to know who you are outside of the hospital. Then there are going to be other people who tell you that your personal statement should only be about the specialty, right? So they're going to tell you that you should only be writing about why you are interested in specialty X. What have you done to pursue your interest in specialty X? And what it is that you value about that specialty. So, what we recommend in order to satisfy all of the different readers who are going to be reading your personal statement is we recommend, look, let's do both of these things. Okay. Let's offer some information about your background, who you are, how have you gotten to this point? And that's especially important for international medical graduates. Why are you here in this country? Why are you seeking a residency here in the United States? Where are you from, right? What did you learn in your home country? What motivated you to then come to the United States? Okay, so we want you to take a balanced approach, and we want you to mention something about your personal background so the reader comes away knowing who you are as a human being and understanding your path. But yet, we also want you to clearly illustrate why you're interested in the specialty, what has led to your interest in that specialty. Now, for international medical graduates, many of whom many of you have had careers almost before applying for residency, right? So like not only what in medical school sort of motivated this interest, but what have you done in your previous career that motivated this interest? So and I hope I'm not sort of jumping the gun.
No.
People often ask
Okay.
us, how long should my personal statement
Statement
be?
B. Right.
Okay. Now, for internet, we like to say, let's keep it to 5,300 characters with spaces. Some people are going to tell you, again, there are these myths out there. There are going to be some people who tell you it shouldn't be more than a page. One page, that's it. Okay. Yeah. If you have strong feelings about it being a page, we have students who have very strong feelings about this because they heard from a mentor at their school. This is going to be mostly US students. They heard from a mentor at their school that they cannot exceed a page. And we say, okay, let's keep it within a page. We can do that, right? Because again, you're going to have a lot of different people giving you different words of wisdom. Okay, now for an international medical graduate, we find this to be especially challenging because you have a lot of territory to cover,
Right.
right?
Right.
You are not the more typical residency applicant who did 4 years in med school, maybe a gap year, depending on the specialty you're applying for, and then boom, you're applying for residency, right? You have a lot more time that you need to account for. And anybody reading your application is going to want to understand your decision making, right? So something else that we do when we're working with students is we say, okay, what questions is this reader going to have about this applicant? So you want to preemptively understand what questions the reader is going to have. And a very natural question is, why specialty X and why in the US?
Yeah.
Why are you here now doing this? Why didn't you stay where your family is, right? Where you were born. So, there has to be some mention of that in the personal statement.
Amazing. Wow. Just give me a minute to unpack this.
Sorry, I can just talk and talk and talk. So you sort of have to interrupt me.
And it's very interesting. One area that often when I was applying that I usually ask is how do I structure my personal statement? Do I recite my resume? Because I have my ERAS resume. And also of note, there are some people who are also applying in Canada who are also listening to us
Hmm.
as we speak.
Okay.
Should I recite my ERAS resume, or I graduated in 2014 and then went to this school and this is why I came to the US and then I worked in this place or this place? Or should I follow a philosophical approach like, oh, someday I was walking by the river and then an apple fell. You notice there are different types of. What's your recommendation? What's your advice from
Yeah,
the years
sure.
of
Great question.
experience?
First of all, let's not do I was walking by the river and something and an apple fell on my head and I had a revelation. Okay, like we're talking about medicine, we're talking about science. We're
Right,
not applying for a PhD in philosophy. Okay,
right,
so you have to again keep in mind who is your audience. Your audience for residency, it's going to be physicians only. Okay. When you're applying to med school, that's different. Then you have a mixture of people, a good mix of people who are reading your application. But when you're applying for residency, you only have physicians who are reviewing your application. Maybe there's some programs where they've the residency coordinators reviewing them, but I think still the majority, it's going to be program directors or, people who are on the
right,
committee.
right,
Um, so you we don't like offering sort of a formulaic approach to how you should structure the personal statement. We want it to be distinctive. We do want you to try to start with something, and I'm sure you've all heard this before. We want you to start with a hook or something catchy, something that's going to grab the reader's attention. That can really be from any point in your life, right? It should be a meaningful time in your life, something where, something impacted you very, very deeply, whether that was a patient whom you cared for, whether that was something that happened, to a relative, whether that was something that happened in your life that was very, very pivotal on your path. So you can start your statement from any point in time, but you do want to start with something that's going to, kind of really draw your reader in and sort of give them a real visual. They can smell where you are, they can see where you are, they can hear where you are. So you want to be as descriptive as possible and try to write a more narrative type of essay. But then we get into sort of more of like the telling. We do want there to be an easy chronology to be able to follow, but you don't just want to highlight your resume. So with ERAS, right, you're going to have 10 experiences that you get to write about.
right.
Your 10 experiences are going to be as important as your personal statement. So don't put too much time into one and not the other. And keep in mind that you need to be filling in the gaps with your personal statement, right? So if it isn't clear how you kind of got from point A to point B to point C to point D, you need to fill in those gaps, right? And having worked with international medical graduates, there are often gaps, right?
Right,
It's not an easy process to
right.
go from there to here. So it's important to explain that decision making, right?
Talking about gaps, do you think applicants should address their red flags and quote what they call red flags, years of graduation, why they haven't been into practice, number of attempts, or they should just be quiet about it and just let it slide?
Great question. Number of attempts, I don't love students to address that, right? Look, you didn't pass a step. It's hard to make an excuse. I think for people where English is a second language, to me, that makes good sense why maybe you didn't pass on an initial attempt. Okay. So I wouldn't address that in a personal statement. Gaps in time are a red flag. So we always want students addressing gaps in time. I can tell you that we had DNR. I don't know, when I was on the residency committee, where do not rank. Okay, so if
Right.
someone had gaps in time that weren't accounted for, our minds start to wander. DNR. Okay, so you always want to be accounting for gaps in time. Otherwise, anything that's going to leave someone's imagination to sort of create, fill in those gaps on their own, that's when you want to offer information.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, we're open to questions at any time because we want this to be conversational. I'm talking to the audience. So if you have any question at any time, just raise your hand, put it in the chat, send it in. Dr. Friedman, does this concept of keep your personal statement general or make your personal statement specific to programs and specific to
Hmm.
residencies and specific to subspecialties?
Good
What
question.
do you recommend? Put on a generalized approach or make it personal to John Hopkins or make it, and then create another one for internal medicine? Because oftentimes foreign medical graduates, we have over 100 applications
I
spread
know.
apart, and then three or four subspecialties that was applying internal medicine,
Yep.
pediatrics, psychiatry, just to increase our chances. What do you
Yep.
recommend?
For different specialties, you need a different personal statement. So the only time where, no, I wouldn't even say that. Family, I mean, most sort of common specialties are probably psych, family medicine, internal medicine, peds, right? Those are probably four of the most common, I would say. Different personal statement for each. Now, the background information of like who you are, how you've made your decisions, some of that can be the same. But each of those specialties is so different that you want to compose a distinctive personal statement for each specialty. Now, if you had asked me 5 years ago, should you be writing a distinctive personal statement for each geographic area? For maybe for specific programs. If you had asked me that 5 years ago, I would have said, yeah, great idea. But now that we have signaling and now that we have geographic preferencing on the ERAS application, less important. Okay. Because um, it depending on the specialty, it can be tough to get an interview if you don't signal a program. All right. So, like when we first, for example, just a little sort of anecdote here. When we first, had COVID and there were virtual interviews before signaling, and this is why this all evolved. I mean,
Right.
we had some students who got literally like 50 interviews and they were going on all of them. And I was like, I would say to these students, I'm like, you don't need to go on that many interviews. Please don't hoard the interviews, right? So because there's signaling and geographic preferencing now, there isn't that same level of hoarding going on. But by the same token, students aren't getting, high numbers of interviews in the same way. So I think there sort of is a safety valve on that. So I don't think you have to sort of create individual personal statements highlighting specific programs. What you do need to do is you need to, and we're getting into different topics, right? But like
Right.
you do need to signal strategically.
That's it.
That's really important.
Right. Awesome. Hey, we have a few questions
Yeah,
in the chat so that we don't leave them lying.
sure.
Welcome, Dr. Jessica. Welcome, Dr. Jessica. Let's see. All right. Someone asked, my question is, what response do program directors want to hear as per the reason
Mm.
for the interest of pursuing residency here in the US rather than back in your home country?
Okay. Yeah, no. I love questions. What do they want from me? Okay. And we all want to tell people what they want to hear, right? Like when we're trying to get something, whether that's a job or whether that's a residency or whether that's getting into med school, we want to give them what they want to hear. But the bottom line is they don't want to hear anything. They want to understand your authentic path. So the right answer is only your answer. I can't tell you what that answer is. When someone is interviewing you, right? Because the goal here is to get an interview. And if you have fabricated something when you are interviewing, it's going to be clear that you're fabricating something. Even if you don't have a skilled interviewer, if they sense that like what you're saying is not 100% truthful, it's just going to hit them in the wrong way, right?
I agree. Absolutely. I agree. Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. Let's see what we have next. What red flags
Mm,
should we mention in personal statements? I
okay.
believe that should be more personal, but let's see what you
Yeah.
say. What your
Yeah.
take is.
Um, don't mention scores. Um, as we talked about, you want to mention gaps in time. You want to explain your gaps in time. If you were in another specialty, if you left a program, that will need to be explained to some degree, what motivated that. those are tough red flags to overcome, in all honesty, unless you have the endorsement from your program director and you were leaving, and it was a parting of ways mutually, and your program director supported you. So I would really, these are done, we decide these things on such an individual level. It also depends on, in the application, if there's going to be a space where you can write about this. Like, was there an interruption in your education? Are we going to choose to write about that in that section? And if we do, we're not going to then mention it again in the personal statement, right? It's about
Right.
using the different sections strategically. So ideally, the personal statement can just be 100% positive.
Hmm. Amazing. I would like to delve into some other ethical concerns or areas that probably might, this is a day of AI.
Mhm.
Everybody plugs in things into ChatGPT,
Yeah.
writes it. Last year we had a huge debate in our forum where does ECFMG, do they have anything against using ChatGPT to write your personal statement?
Mhm.
Don't they have, how do program directors view it? It was a whole lot of debate.
Mhm.
What's your take on that topic?
Yeah. AI is part of our worlds, right? We are all using it. We all need to learn how to use it creatively and to benefit us the most, whatever it is we're doing, whatever phase of education we're in. So it's my feeling that if you pretend this doesn't exist, you're kind of doing yourself a disservice. The way that you write and the type of language that you use needs to match how you speak. So especially when we are talking about people where English potentially is not the first language, this can be a major, faux pas,
Right.
right? So
Right.
you don't want to be reliant on AI. And it's sort of like, as I'm speaking about this, it's making me realize, having used AI myself, AI sometimes is great, but AI sometimes is really bad. And I mean, I find that there are major gaps in knowledge, and AI is to an extent, sort of where we are with chat GPTs and the other generative, programs, or whatever you want to call it, that exist out there. I find that AI feeds me a lot of mistakes if I don't feed it the right information, right?
Right.
So I would be cautious having AI rewrite a statement to make it perfect. I mean, our goal when we're working with students is always to make sure we're staying in your writing style. We're not rewriting anything for you, because one of the key things is that your personal statement needs to match how you speak, right? So if the personal statement doesn't sound like you, again, there's that disconnect that we
Right.
talked about,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Now, I think, okay, that you could probably, and this would be an interesting experiment, you could probably write something and say and explain to AI, English is not my first language. This is my first language. I learned English X number of years ago. Like, you could probably prompt it to make it so it's not perfect. I
Amazing.
bet.
Amazing. Amazing. I mean, I think what you said makes a whole lot of sense. So if you're level one speaking and then you're putting up your writing that's like on level five, professorial, or so clean, so garnished, you kind of look, discordant. This applicant speaking
That's
so
exactly
much,
it.
brilliant English. Of course, many of us don't have English as our first language.
Of course.
So it makes absolute sense. Let me jump into another area of
Mhm.
controversy. What if you write 2 pages? What if your story is so long? Let's say you're an old graduate, 2020 or 2014 or 2015, you've done residency in your country, you've done this, you've volunteered, and your story is so long, so difficult to condense. Do program directors frown at it, even though that the recommendation is 553 characters or at least a page?
Yeah. It's a good question. Our feeling, and what we always explain to anybody who has a non-traditional path, is, look, you can try to condense your personal statement to one page, but you are not going to be doing yourself a service. You're not going to be doing yourself justice. Okay. Programs that are going to consider people who are several years out of medical school, who are international medical graduates, they understand that you have had a circuitous path to this point, right?
Yeah.
So they are accustomed to getting personal statements that detail a narrative, right? So again, this is all about your audience. Now, the way we're going to advise a 2014 international medical graduate is going to be very different than how we're going to advise, let's say, a student who went from undergrad to med school to residency with absolutely no breaks. We're going to advise those two people very, very different, right? Because it's probably going to take less space, so to speak, for the student who went straight through and is what? I mean, is 26, right?
Right.
We're going to be advising that student very differently than we're going to be advising someone who's, let's say, 30.
Right.
They have less, there's less time traveled.
Right. Thank you so much, Dr. Friedman. This is once again IMG Research Academy. We have these scientific sessions where we talk about different aspects of getting into a residency or surviving in residency. That's an area I forgot to mention initially, because many of us get into residency. Unfortunately, few percentage don't eventually get to graduate because of one thing or another. So we kind of have this forum where we all come together and say, hey, you need to sit up, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Today, we're addressing personal statement, and then we have an expert in our midst who have won several caps in the past, associate program director, and currently running a group that helps people to get into medical school and also get into residency. Thank you, Dr. Friedman, for coming to our program. It is an open mic session. What I mean by open mic, if you have any question you want to ask, please raise your hand, Dr. Jude. Dr. Judah, you can unmute your mic and ask your question. She's talked about personal statement, the length, the content, the do's, the don'ts, what program directors want to hear. In fact, this is the first time I'm hearing that program directors actually don't want to hear anything. They just want to hear your story because we had this mindset that there's something they're looking for, and then if they don't see it, they kind of like wave your personal statement aside. Or is there any special thing that you think that program directors want to hear?
They
Are
just
you,
want to understand who you are, truly. I mean, if there's something that they want to hear, they've heard it a billion times,
Right.
right? So don't try to tell them what you think they want. I mean, if there's sort of a golden rule in writing for any admissions process, this applies not just to this, but when you apply for attending jobs or a regular job or don't psych out like what do they want to hear from me,
Dr.
especially
Judah.
when you're interviewing, because when you're interviewing, it's sort of like anything that you've tried to sort of embellish or fabricate, it all comes out. I mean, like many of you, thankfully, don't know about the college admissions process in the US,
Right.
but there's no interview for the college admissions process in the US.
Mhm.
So anything you put on paper is it, right? There's no interview. But when you have interviews, you better be authentic in your writing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Dr. Judah, you have a question.
yeah, she pretty much answered my question right there. My question was, is there certain things like cliche topics or areas or even certain experiences that most program directors wouldn't want to see? Like, I don't want to say this cliche, but like, coming from the low income household or family of immigrants, is that something we should avoid putting on the personal statement? Okay.
That's great information, right? Because again, this speaks to who you are. And to me, someone who's overcome adversity, even though it's your norm, like sometimes when we talk to students, it's like, wow, you've overcome so much adversity. And they're like, that's just my family. There's no adversity there. It's like, no, that's impressive. Like that you come from this background and here you are. That says a lot about so many of the different qualities that we want in our physicians.
Before the next question, Dr. Esther, hold your thought. Something very petty that I wouldn't say petty anyway, but something that also concerns misspellings and errors. Are they like turn-offs to programs when they read it? Like,
You know what? If you have a typo or a misspelling, no, like that's human. Like, you know, I remember one time last year we told somebody because they had one single typo and we were like, you know what? That's going to tell somebody you didn't use AI. You know, so like, and I'm not
Absolutely.
advocating for like throwing in a misspelling.
Typos.
I'm not advocating that at all. But I mean, really, you know, so like that is something I'd use AI for. Can you please, you know, please review? I mean, again, how are you going to prompt the AI? Please review this document for misspellings and grammatical errors only. Otherwise, please do not change any of the content.
Hmm. Absolutely brilliant prompts. Dr. Esther, you can unmute your mic and tell us your thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Good
I mean, if you
evening,
don't mind
everyone.
introducing yourself, where you are, what part of the country you are. I know that people are coming
Okay,
from different parts of the country.
okay. So my name is Esther. I'm an IMG. I studied in Ukraine and graduated in 2022. I'm currently in Nigeria. I worked previously in Tanzania, but I am currently in Nigeria at the moment.
Awesome.
So, yeah. So my question is, I want to ask about like the gap years. You said we should mention our red flags. So I wanted to ask if, for example, you took a 1 year gap to focus on writing the steps and preparing for March, should we also include this in our personal statement?
I
Thank
would.
you.
Yeah, I would definitely include that because otherwise they're going to say, you know, what was Esther doing for this year? Right? You need to answer the
Okay.
question you know they're going to have. So even if it's a sentence, you need to explain that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and sorry to I want to ask an additional
No, go
question.
ahead.
If, for example, during your gap year, you were working in a non-clinical role, but you were preparing for the steps, is it also important to mention that this when you're applying?
Absolutely. Because that shows
Okay.
that you haven't abandoned clinical medicine, that you're still working in clinical medicine, you're still improving your skills. You know, I assume that was in your home country. That's very important. You know, keep in mind. So, you know, that isn't such a gap year then, Esther, to me. I mean, if you were working in a clinical setting during that year, then that would be included, I would think, as one of your experiences in ERAS. And depending on what clinical environment that was, maybe that was also an experience that furthered your interest in the specialty you're applying for, or made you consider a different specialty that you're now applying for.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
All right. Dr.
That's all.
Dr. Nama, I think I see your hand up, and then after you, Dr. Baylor. Pardon me if I can't mention your names properly, but
Yeah.
just a
Okay.
brief introduction of who you are, where you're from, and then your question.
All right. My name is Antonia. I'm a graduate from medical school in Nigeria, but now I reside in United States. Um, I live in Texas. So, and I currently work in one of the clinical areas. So, as a follow-up to her question with the gap years, I know that immigrating from outside the country here to the United States, you still have some time to get your papers and get acclimatized, settled down before you be able to get something to do. Some of us immediately you do not have the opportunity or you're not chance to maybe get a work in a clinical setting. It might be outside the clinical setting before you can settle down and now start finding your ways to, like it happened to me. I worked when I came in here, I took some time to get my papers and I wasn't able to train in anything until I got my documents. And I worked in other areas outside the clinical setting. So those also added to the gap years. Are we expected to also explain this in a business statement or add them in the ERAS experience, even though they are not like in clinical settings? How is
Yeah.
it going to affect us?
Yeah.
That's a brilliant
Can I
question.
ask, are you able to say what you did during that time and how long you were?
I know I worked at the Walmart. I worked as a cashier. And during that time, I was training to be, I was training for a medical assistant. I was doing a medical assistant training. So after I completed the training within 6 months, I now had to start working as a medical assistant. So all of them were during the period I was trying to settle down and I'm waiting for my documents. In fact, I couldn't start the medical training because I was waiting for my green card, the documents to get ready before I can register for training in school because they needed those documents.
I get it.
So immediately I got it. I started training as a medical assistant just to be in the clinical setting. And after that, I started working as a medical assistant to today, and I worked with several providers and different clinics.
Wow. Where are you doing that? Where are you working as a medical assistant?
UT Southwestern, but we are about relocating. So I'm currently work at Texas Tech.
Wow, that's awesome. Okay. To me, Walmart is so quintessential American. I bet you learned a ton at Walmart. I bet you learned so much about American culture,
Culture.
about how to communicate. To me, that is so important. I mean, that helped you to become culturally competent regarding United States culture. Like, so that, like, I would even potentially start a personal statement with a vignette from Walmart. Like, I love that.
Absolutely. Tanama, did she answer your question? You're
Yeah,
unmuted.
yeah. Thank you so much. And I also remember during that time, I was doubling working at a Walmart and I was also doing deliveries, like what do you call it?
I DoorDash.
Yes,
Oh,
DoorDash. So I was doubling the two while I was also training as a medical assistant. So
awesome. I love this. And it just shows how hardworking you are. Like, I love that.
Wow, some of this, listening to you, Dr. Friedman, reminds me of some of the mistakes we make because many times we want to hide that aspect of us that we worked on the farm, we did Uber, we did
No,
all those little things before we
these are
transition.
incredible experiences, and it shows your humility and, your work ethic, and don't shy away from these experiences.
Thank you so much, Dr. Eno.
Thank you so much. My name is Beulah, or otherwise Enu, as they call me at home. I'm from the University of Ghana, class of 2021. Just graduated from an MPH program in May. Um, I just wanted to clarify. I think you might have clarified this in your previous response about what really constitutes a gap year, and then how we can kind of put that in our personal statement. So just to maybe redirect or tweak my question a little bit, are we supposed to assume that whoever is reading our personal statement also can see our ERAS experiences and realize that what we have in ERAS really doesn't have a clinical gap, but was not mentioned in the personal statement?
Yes, you can assume that.
Okay, then I think that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah. Where is your MPH? I'm just curious.
Hopkins.
Wow. Awesome. Amazing. You guys are amazing.
Well, this is an open mic session. And then I think I see somebody's hand. Okay, Dr. Eno, you've already asked your question. You can ask your question at any time. There is an aspect of while we're waiting for more questions, there's an aspect of the personal statement that I also want us to talk before we veer into any other topic as we are rounding up. Any other advice you have for us, general mindset, application, any other thing that since I don't know if we're going to have the opportunity to have you again. But before we veer off, just one question. There's many of us are either trained in one specialty before, maybe cardiology, internal medicine, and we're actually trying to go back to that specialty, or we're kind of longing to go back to that specialty. But in the US, you're not applying to fellowship yet, you're applying to internal medicine or pediatrics or whatever. So is it advisable when you're talking about your future contribution or future career trajectory in your personal statement to say, hey, I look forward to becoming a cardiologist when this whole personal statement is focused on just becoming an internal medicine physician? What's your take on that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think to some degree, as we were talking about tailoring personal statements, I think to some degree this is going to depend on the program, right? So and again, this sort of veers into another topic, but when you're choosing, and I realize that as international medical graduates, you're applying to hundreds of programs. I get that. But for example, if you're applying to a program where there are no fellowship matches and everyone's going into primary care, if you write that you want to become a cardiologist, you might be seen as a mismatch for that program, right? So I think that if you're applying to a program where there are a lot of fellowship matches, and this should all be publicly available, on their websites, then I think it's perfectly okay to say, I hope to get a solid foundation in internal medicine and to learn how to practice medicine in the United States and, learn more about preventive health or, whatever it is that you want to gain from an internal medicine residency. My ultimate goal is to, hopefully be fellowship trained in cardiology so I can, continue doing what I loved, in wherever you're from.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Do you have any other thought process as we begin to wind up? Any advice in general application around this area that we've not talked about?
I know it's so cliche, but literally just tell your story. That's the best thing you can do. Like,
Dr.
don't try to spin it. Don't try to, be outstanding because you don't think you're outstanding. Just tell your story.
Thank you so much. Dr. Finnegan, I see your hands up.
Yes, yes, thank you. I just have one question to ask. So I wanted to find out if working as a registered nurse in the US qualifies as a US clinical experience, because I currently work as an RN here.
Wait, so did you get certified as an RN here?
Yes, I did.
Wow. That's amazing. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think because I'm not an RN expert. You're more of an expert on this than I am. I
Yes.
would think that you could, work anywhere where an RN works, maybe like a vaccine clinic, maybe working in underserved communities, in various places. But I
No,
don't know the answer to that.
I actually work in the hospital here because I did nursing back in my country, and
Right.
then when I finished, I went back to medical school, and then when I finished, I started working as a doctor, and then I relocated to America, and when I got here, I actually took my NCLEX before I moved there,
Wow.
so I started working at the hospital presently. So, but
Wow.
I've had mixed reactions to this as to whether RN experience qualifies as a US clinical experience or not. So, I'm
Oh.
just not very clear in that area. So, that's why I'm asking.
Oh, I understand. So you're working as an RN in the US.
Yes.
Yeah, of course that's US clinical experience.
I truly believe that's US clinical experience.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would do my best. What department are you working in?
I currently work in a med-surg unit. Uh,
Awesome.
yeah, telemetry unit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure you know this. Get to know your attendings, like have them
Yes.
write great letters of recommendation. I mean, that's a
Right.
whole you have so many US letters of rec right there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Is it an academic hospital or a community?
Yes, yes. It's actually in New Jersey, RWJ Barnabas. So
Oh,
yeah.
I'm a Jersey girl. I mean, that's
Oh,
great.
excellent.
thank you so much. Dr. Judah, your question. You're muted, right?
Yeah. Sorry, I had one more question. What's your opinion on like having a little bit of humor in your personal statement? Because I've talked to
Hmm.
people before. They said sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's better to leave it out. So what's your take on that?
It depends on the context, right? So like you obviously don't want a humorous essay. This is a serious, we're doing serious stuff here.
Right.
But sprinkled in, depending on the context, it can work.
Mhm.
Um, we would have to see it.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dr. Friedman. This is IMG Research Academy, now Global Research Initiative, a collection of physicians in and within the US who are trying to get into medical practice in the US. We often meet every other Sunday to talk about how to overcome one barrier or another to get us legitimately contributing to healthcare provision in this country. And today we have our guest speaker, who is Dr. Jessica Friedman, who has worn several hats. Currently, I'll use the word med edits, correct? Med edits. Okay. I see some other hand, Dr. Judah. Just before we close, other little areas that people have also asked me a lot of questions. Do I sign out my name when I'm writing my personal statement? Yours faithfully, Dr. Okovi Edwards. Do I put my ECFMG ID? Do I put title when I'm writing my personal statement? Do I address it to dear program director, and then I put a title, the story of my life. And
Yeah.
then
All right. A few
it sounds
rules.
petty, but a lot of people have these concerns in their mind. And
No, I know. There is no
yours
stupid
faithfully.
question. There is no dumb question. A few things you don't want to do. You don't want a title. It's not a letter. You don't want, it's part of your application, no identifying information. Don't sign your name. Don't use quotes. You can use quotes from people maybe if you're telling a story, but like don't use quotes. The only inspiration should be yourself and your experiences.
Dr. Wachuku, you have a question. Thank you so much for that response.
So thank you so much, Dr. Jessica, for being here today to help us out. I appreciate it. My question is, okay, so I forgot to introduce myself. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Now I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay, my name is Marian. I'm from Nigeria, finished from medical school in Nigeria. I'm currently here in the US, stay in Texas. My question is a little bit kind of unique to me, but it's kind of unique to my school. So my medical school way back in Nigeria, we were like among the initial sets after the school got accreditation. So we had some kind of delay that was kind of peculiar to my school. So normally in my country, I mean, medicine is supposed to be like 6 years, but we ended up spending like 11 years in school. So, yes. So, like, when you see my application, I mean, that would kind of catch your eyes. It's gonna say, "Oh, what she did in school like all this years." So I've gotten some mixed advice from people. I'm not sure what to do about it. Is it something I should mention in my personal statement? Because in my MSP, my school kind of explained it in my MSP, the reason why we stayed that long in school, they kind of put like, just a few lines to explain it. But then I'm wondering too, should I still explain that in my personal statement? Some people say, don't do that. It's going to be like some kind of, they may perceive it in some way. Some people say explain it, but I don't know. I'm just going to.
I get it. Okay. First of all, what did you, when your education was extended from 6 to 11 years, what did you do during those 5 years?
We were in school. They just had like our programs. We kind of just prolonged. We were just in school all those years.
Wow.
Yeah. We were in school. Just the curriculum was just prolonged.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, it's an interesting question because you could potentially put this in, was your education interrupted, right? You could probably click yes for that and write something maybe, but it wasn't really interrupted because you were enrolled
It wasn't.
time.
Yeah, it wasn't really interrupted, yes.
I probably would put this in I would probably just mention it, I would mention it within the context of how that benefited you. Like what were you doing?
What extra you learned?
Which I'm wondering myself, which is why I laugh. But like, what additional education did you get during those additional, literally 5 years, right? I would probably mention it within that context.
Okay. Now, within that context, personally for me, what I did, I started a small clothing business. I was doing with my school, just like personally for me, that was what I was doing during that period.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's something that, if it's worth mentioning to peers.
I would mention it. I wouldn't highlight it, but I would mention it so it isn't lost on somebody.
Okay.
Right. So they don't think that you're trying to pull a fast one and like,
Right.
there was like, so I would definitely write about it, but I wouldn't, it should in no way be dominating.
All right, Dr. Nwachukwu, I hope that satisfies your question. We have 2 or 3 more hands. We're going to be taking the last 3 questions, and then we're going to be closing for the day. We'll start with Dr. Omiwole.
Yes, thank you so much. My name is Omiwole. I'm Bukumi first name. I'm currently in Texas. I graduated from Nigeria. So my question is it okay to mention that I'm currently in a graduate program and right in the middle of it? Would that be seen as not being interested in wanting to start residency? So I've been thinking about that.
What graduate program is it?
I just finished a master's program, so I'm going into a PhD program, and the primary reason for that is to be in status till completion of my
What PhD
application
program?
and residency.
Got
It's
it, got
in
it.
applied clinical research.
Applied
Okay.
clinical research.
Is the program aware that you're applying for residency?
No, they're not.
Oh, that's tricky. I don't know that I'd mention that. Right? Because you don't want it to seem as though you're being in any way dishonest with a PhD program. You know what I mean?
Right.
Right.
So I would probably, and I assume you're getting letters from the masters, like, when you got the MA, I assume you have some letter, like a letter of recommendation from them.
No, I didn't. I didn't use the direct letters from them.
There are no professors who can write you a letter.
So it was a master's in health informatics.
Okay.
So I didn't. It's a different school.
Oh, I understand.
It's a
Okay.
different.
Okay. My gut here is that you shouldn't be mentioning it if they don't understand, if they don't know your plans, because I think that would be an obvious question on an interview, and that would put you in a bad place.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then to our last question, Dr. Esther and Dr. Nama, 2 last questions.
Okay, thank you once again. So when Mary asked her question, Dr. Wanchiko asked her question, I just remembered I went to 2 different medical schools in Ukraine. I want to know if that's a red flag, because my reason for switching medical schools was because I wanted like a better curriculum. Like my preclinical years was in one school, and for my clinical years, it was in a different school. So I wonder if that's going to be like a red flag in my application, and if I should mention that when writing a personal statement.
It shouldn't be. I don't know if you guys have this. I always refer to it because when I have questions like this, I'm just going to put it in the chat. But the ERAS worksheet, it tells you like all the different sections on ERAS. I think that there's going to be a section here about medical education where it's going to give you a place for you to explain that, right?
Okay.
Let me just see. And my feeling is that you probably should write about it there. If not, oh yeah, academic professional interruptions. There's going to be a place for this, right? I would find the place for it, and I would probably write about it in the application itself and not in the personal statement.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
If for some reason there's not a spot for it that makes sense, then I probably would just mention it again, just like one line.
Yeah, okay.
Dr. Nama, we're almost out of time. We're 4 minutes to the time.
So it's just to follow up with Dr. Wanchiku's question, extension of the medical school. I remember when I was in medical school, there was this time of general industrial action by strike by ASU and the labor. So it was the longest period of industrial action in the country, Nigeria, and affected almost everything across board. It's also affected our training, and we had to have additional 2 years. Medical training in our country, Nigeria, is 6 years. But because of that instance and the prolonged industrial action by the ASU and the labor, it added extra 2 years to us.
Yeah.
So
It-
how do we represent this? Do you add it in ERAS as an extension of your medical school,
I would do
or do you add it in the personal?
I would do that. Or depending on what you did during those 2 years, it could also be in the personal statement. During the 2 years when, this was going on in my country, I did X, Y, and Z, right? So it could even just sort of be referenced in the personal statement as well.
Okay, and as well as put it in ERAS as an extension.
And that's when you're going to detail exactly what was going on in your country. Yep.
Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you.
We will be closing today's session. I don't know, maybe we can squeeze in Dr. Jerry Morty, because I've seen your hand up for a while. Otherwise, we'll be closing and taking our final comments. Let's just squeeze in Dr. Jerry Morty's question in 1 minute.
All right, thank you very much. My question is very quick. I don't know, I joined late. I don't know if this has already been answered before, but my question is, what are the top 3 errors that you see that IMGs make in their personal statement?
It's a brilliant question.
That's a good question. I'd say a regurg of the resume is probably one. Not including any information about the background, I think, and we've kind of touched on that a couple of times. How you've gotten to this point, why you've made the decisions you've made, what else you've done on your path, understanding that your path has been non-traditional, because it is, for almost all international medical graduates. That's important to sort of account for your time. What's number 3? Number 3 is probably like touches on the ChatGPT, but we haven't seen it yet, but like sort of sending us something that's too good, that you've clearly gotten written by somebody else because you think you can't do it yourself, and you can. Because I know there are a lot of services out there that are specifically geared to IMGs, and they write your personal statement for you. And I can't discourage that enough. Don't do that. You can do this.
Dr. Morty, does that answer your questions?
Yes, totally. Thank you so much.
All right. By way of closing, Dr. Friedman, do you have any closing comments or summaries for us?
I think that you are all amazing and so impressive.
Thank you.
And go for it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Friedman, for these insights. Thank you for your thoughtfulness. Thank you for accepting our request without even knowing who we are, because very many people are very wary of who they talk to on the internet. I'll be reaching back to you to send you an official thank you email. I also posted her Instagram page on the question segments. You can also reach out to her directly through her Instagram page. This is Global Research Initiative, an initiative that started in 2019 to see how we can improve ourselves while trying to get into the United States residency and medical system. My name is Dr. Okobi. I'm a family physician. By way of disclosure, this program is done outside my residency time. I'm not representing my residency or my program. It's absolutely my free time, Sunday, 8 p.m., just relaxing at home and doing this talk. Thank you so much, Dr.
Thank
Friedman.
you. No, really, it was a true pleasure to talk to all of you. And Dr. Eddie, you're great for doing this.
Thank you so much. All right. So,
Thank you all.
All right. Thank you so much.
Loved meeting all of you. Thank you.
Same here.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, while Dr. Friedman is gone, I'll stop the recording